he
I think he's highlighted. We got him.
yeah, unfortunately I highlighted the wrong thing on my side. So I was about to send Matt a message and I highlighted the wrong thing, so I'm all screwed up, but hopefully we get talking. So let's see, I'll get you intro started. So hey, today we're joined by Nathanael Young, a YAV veteran, licensed nurse, and senior recruiter at Leidos QTC Health Services. He's managed full cycle recruiting for healthcare and technical positions across the U.S., from clinicians and project managers to UX designers and product leaders. He doesn't just recruit, though. He actively mentors transitioning service members, running veteran medical networks with thousands of members, offering free resume reviews, and helping fellow vets get back into both federal and private sector roles. He brings the rare combination of having been in your boots as a transitioning veteran, sitting on the recruiter side of the table. Today, he's here to share exactly what recruiters look for, how to get noticed, and how to tap into the hidden job market most vets never see. Welcome, Nathaniel. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Hey, I'll get started off easy. So, when you got out of the Navy, what was the hardest part of becoming a civilian?
Uh,
Where was your lymphac?
Honestly, transition into the civilian employment sector was very easy for me. It was some of the shortfalls that I had during my transition, like when I was trying to sell my house when I was leaving the service, I had a bunch of surprise bills come up, which quickly drained all the savings that I had. Nobody told me that if I got 100% disabled rating from the VA, that my life insurance would to get qualified for life insurance would be more expensive, and that because I transitioned at 8 years, when I was going through TAPS, they told me like, hey, as you're transitioning out, TRICARE covers you for 6 months. When you make that transition, what it actually turned out was that you're eligible for TRICARE for 6 months, but the cost is like $1,500 per month, and it's a $4,500 upfront quarterly pay.
Hmm. Yeah, I was a kick in the shorts, huh?
Yeah, yeah. So that stuff that was rough. I thought for the most part, my transition went relatively smooth transitioning into it because I'd put so much effort into lining myself up with a job and pivoting into a whole new career.
Yeah, that was a mistake that I made, is I didn't know the insurance thing because nobody told me. I had no idea how screwed up that the VA thing could make insurance. So get it before you get out. Um, so I mean, how'd you figure out which career path fit you best? Nursing, HR, recruiting? I mean,
Yeah,
you had some options.
I kind of fell into the recruiting. I originally messaged my at the time he was the vice president of talent acquisition for Pediatric Associates, and I was doing what most people do on LinkedIn, and I'm like, hey, can you find me a job? Here's my resume. And going forward, once we progress a little bit more in the conversation, I'll kind of refine that pitch for you guys. But that's how I approached him. We talked. He was like, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I don't know. I have 8 years of healthcare experience. I have my license for nursing. I think I want to be a practice or an operations manager." He's like, "Okay, well, you don't really know what you want to do, so I'm going to kick you down to like 2 levels below me to the recruiter." That recruiter saw that with my healthcare background, my license for nursing, and that I was a salesman before the Navy, that I'd be a good fit potentially for the clinician recruitment team. And then I had to go through a formal interview process. I ended up landing a SkillBridge internship I did for 3 months, and then that led to a full-time job offer uh, into pediatric and family medicine clinician recruitment.
It's funny you say that because I had something similar when I got out of the military. I was recruiting, and then I went and worked for Pratt and Whitney recruiting, and because I spoke jet engine, because I worked around aircraft before, I was able to fit into the position way easier because I understood what these hiring managers were looking for. Did you find that knowing that language on the nursing side especially made it easy?
Oh, absolutely. And I feel that having my license for nursing and my medical background gave me access to candidate pools that other recruiters wouldn't readily be like have access to because of that. Because my LVN allowed me to join the nurse groups, to join the nurse practitioner groups, to join the medical professional groups that some of them are restrictive and don't allow recruiters in unless you have that medical background. So it allowed me to really not only talk the talk with the candidates, but have that walk experience with them and say, hey, I know when I was on the ward, we didn't get breaks all the time. Well, here we have breaks, and I know sometimes you can kind of you can like talk the gripes with them, like
Yeah.
with healthcare, right? Like low pay, no breaks, on call, and then being able to talk that language with them really helped me bridge the gap and build the rapport quicker than some of the other recruiters on my team that had no medical background at all.
Yeah, it's a huge advantage, like working in that industry beforehand before you get into other aspects of it, because you actually know what the
Yeah.
hell's going on. I mean, when you're looking at guys you're talking to, what do you usually see veterans usually get wrong when they start applying for jobs?
I think the biggest thing is that they try to be jack of all trades. Do anything. I'm used to being for is niche subject matter experts. So if you're going to be in HR, you need to figure out what exactly you're looking to do in HR, because HR is such a broad field. Do you want to be in TA? Do you want to be in compensation? Do you want to be in benefits? Do you want to be in HR generalist? Um, the other thing I would say, veterans make the mistake that because they did 20 years in the military, they want to come out and be like HR directors or operations managers. And being in the military versus civilian world, there is a steep difference, especially like in the HR side, because in the military, you'll process people's paperwork to get out, but you're not firing people. You're not dealing with FMLA. You're not dealing with FLSA. You're not dealing with a lot of the civilian laws. And so, what I would say to set you up if you're trying to do the HR field is start low. Come in as like an HR generalist or HR BP business partner, really learn the ropes before you move up to that managerial position. It's the same thing with like TA. I have a lot of conversations with military recruiters that want to come out and be recruiters post service, and a lot of times I have to tell them like, hey, what the questions you asked when you were in the military, they're not legal. You can't ask those. You can't ask people like, hey, do you have kids in a family? Are you pregnant? There's a lot of questions that you can't ask that in the military you kind of get a waiver for. Um, and you're not really negotiating, right? Like military, you're not negotiating someone who wants to come in as an E4 and negotiating down as an E2 because you're doing the service a benefit. You're not negotiating comp or benefits. You can't be like, hey, everybody else gets 30 days of PTO, but because I like you, I'll give you 45 days of PTO. We can't do that. So what I always tell those transition recruiters is, take it slow, observe the recruitment process as you're going through it, refine your own pitch, attend certification like civilian courses through LinkedIn Learning, Coursera, and start learning the civilian lingo, because that is different than say the military lingo for recruitment. So yeah, I would say that. So coming in at a lower pace, especially if you do have retirement and disability, that kind of offsets the lower salary that you're going to start off with. But you can rise quickly. Like my first job out of the service, I was making about 65K a year plus uncapped commissions, and it was very eye-opening my first job because I was like 65. My first year in that job, I generated probably about 35,000 worth of bonuses, and then my second year or my next 6 months I generated another 15, so about 50,000. That company only ended up paying 6,000 in the bonuses, and it was one of the reasons I left was because they kept kicking the bonuses down the road. Yeah, so it was very frustrating. So when I was getting
Yeah.
out, I was like, oh, I need to make 85 because that's what TAP says. I'm an E5. And then when I got out and I was like, oh, 65, that's low. But, if I get these commissions that they're saying and it's uncapped, I'm going to make this place go bankrupt. That's how good I'm going to be as a recruiter. And yeah, I got 50K, but they never paid it
No, you
out. I only
didn't.
got, yeah. So I ended up leaving. And because of the network I established on LinkedIn at the time with 15,000 followers, QTC management, now Leidos QTCO services, reached out. Even though I only had a year and a half of civilian recruitment experience, they were like, hey, we want you to come in. We need a social media guy. We need a guru that can come in and kind of build our brand presence up. So I was brought in. I beat out 338 other candidates who were on paper much more experienced and qualified than me. But where I differentiated was that I took the time to build a social network that I could then lean on for future prospects and sourcing. Um, then that job started me off at 75,000 with an 8% annual. And within 8 months, not even asking for it, they gave me a 8% raise. Um, which raised everything up. That put me up to 81. And then in March, I got promoted to strategic sourcing recruiter, and that came with a 15% pay bump. So now I'm making 93,500 plus a 8% annual, which is like puts me at like 101. And the reason I tell people this is, one, we're all military, right? Like, we're so used to knowing each other's pay. But the other thing is, if you look in 2022, I started at 65, and now in 2025, I'm at 93,000 and change. Total comp 101. So coming in low doesn't necessarily mean that's your forever salary, but it gets your foot in the door. If I tried to fight for a higher salary in the beginning, I probably wouldn't be in recruitment.
Yeah, I mean, especially, coming around the blocks, you get a lot of pushback. Like, you've never done it in this side. I know it's funny you mentioned the questions because, like, I would naturally just build rapport with people when I talk to them to pre-screen them and stuff. And it was really hard, not to talk about things like family and, hey, oh yeah, vacation, where'd you go? Because those are traps for, somebody who's aware or paranoid saying, oh, that's why you discriminated against me. That for me was a tough adjustment because I was just being friendly. I didn't, it didn't matter to me if they had kids or, married or anything like that. But yeah, people take offense to that real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing is, like, military leadership's different than civilian leadership, right? Like, military, there's a very strict hierarchy. If you disrespect me, it's an Article 91 or 92. Versus in the civilian world, you have to learn how to play nice with people, because I've seen it where if someone doesn't like you, like a manager on another team doesn't like you, they'll go all out to sabotage you. And at the end of the day, you're still responsible for delivering those results. So we had a lieutenant colonel. Uh, this was a little bit before I got hired here, but we had a lieutenant colonel over the RHRP program, which is the Reserve Health Readiness Program. And he ordered one of his junior employees to go get him a cup of coffee.
Oh,
Uh, which we don't do in the in the civilian world. And so that was a huge adjustment for him. And he ended up having to be replaced because he couldn't get himself out of that mentality that he no longer has like an aide or a junior enlisted to boss around. So you want to look, it's more about collaboration than it is about like, hey, I'm going to give an order. So you really have to learn about communication and being able to collaborate with other team members.
yeah, that dude must say a piece of work
Yeah.
because you lieutenant colonels usually don't see him pushing that hard for that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, general, yeah, okay, you got an aide de camp, something like that, but think for your britches, boss. I mean, if you had to give one of us a first step in job searches, what would it be to you?
I would say the biggest step I can recommend to anyone is build your LinkedIn presence. You'll see a lot of ads on Facebook, and a lot of people complain on LinkedIn that LinkedIn's dead. The biggest thing is that they don't know how to utilize it. You don't have to have 100,000 followers to be effective on LinkedIn. My first job I probably had maybe like 600 followers. My second job, I had 15,000. Um, the big thing is building that network and building rapport with that network. Too many people go on there, they create a profile, they don't fill it out completely, so they don't even fill it out, and then they let it sit there. A great example is myself in 2017 or 2018. I was looking to possibly get out of the service as an E4. And so I went on LinkedIn, I created a very basic bare bones profile. And then I ended up re-enlisting because I saw that without a college degree, my opportunities were extremely limited. So I re-enlisted with the intention of going to college. So that sat there for about 5 years. And then 2022, after my daughter was born, I was like, okay, I want to get out of the service. And I have 6 months to my EAS. So I need to make this happen. I had about 50 connections. Well, in a month, I grew it to 500. And that 500, because I was constantly networking, like going to events, grabbing every recruiter's card I could, it led to 12 job interviews where I landed 8 of them, and that's how I did my career pivot into um, recruitment. And then ever since then, because of that network that I've had established, I'm now on the board of advisors for the HR program at American Public and Military University. I'm also a mentor through ACP and a few other organizations, but that network has opened up so many doors. It allowed me to get mentorship throughout the disability process, which allowed me to do a one and done. It was very streamlined. I ended up with 100%, and it definitely would not have been possible without the mentorship that I received. But a lot of military folks, like you're in the military for 20 years, and most people don't turn on their LinkedIn until they're about 6 months out. And I would say my biggest regret when I was transitioning out was not taking LinkedIn more serious, because the opportunities that I've experienced in the last 3 years, I could have had been miles ahead on that if I had started earlier. So my biggest piece of advice is to get on LinkedIn. One, fill out the sections, because as you fill out the sections, that creates a profile that's search engine optimized and it's full of keywords. So when recruiters are doing search strings for potential candidates, you have a higher likelihood of appearing in those searches. Um, it's more than just a resume. Like, I don't want you to think of LinkedIn as just a digital resume. It's much more than that. That's where, like, your keywords, your skills, your keywords, pepper them throughout. Use AI to kind of help you tweak it and figure out which words are going to pull in the most searches. And then from there, like, engage, create content, engage with other people's content. That's the other 50% of LinkedIn that people are missing, is that they go on there, they create a profile, and then they wait for the recruiters to come to them. That's like the equivalent of fishing, where you just drop a line in the water and you wait for the fish to come to you. The other way I would do it is, so you have your profile and then you create content which is going to bring people to you, and then you engage with other people's content. How I got approached by Leidos QTC Health Services was, I was friends with one of the managers here named Casey Farr, and he ended up approaching me. We were friends for about a year and a half on LinkedIn, and I would send him free referrals from my connections that I had on there, my network. I was like, hey, I think this person would be a great fit for this role. um, Here it is. I sent him probably about 2 dozen candidates that I just wanted to help out my network with. So I was helping him out. I was helping my network out. Goodwill comes around. About a year and a half into it, October 2023, Casey reached out and said, hey, I have a recruiter position on my team. I want you on that position. You sent me over 2 dozen people. We ended up hiring almost half a dozen of them. So I know you can bring results, and you did it for free. So we're happy with that. But building that rapport and continuing that professional relationship was the reason I got in front of the hiring team. And Casey served as my advocate throughout the entire hiring process, which allowed me to, again, beat out 338 other candidates. And I had 17 months of recruitment experience. So on paper, I should never have been even given the chance, because the job required 4 to 7 years of recruitment experience. But because I cultivated that professional relationship, that pay dividends in the future. So that's what I would tell most service members. Like, get on LinkedIn, engage with, connect with your friends, your family, your coworkers, your classmates, because you never know which side of the interview table you're going to end up on. And then after that, expand to your industry professionals, the individuals that are posting about it, saying, hey, this is a trend that I like or don't like. This is how I would change it. And it gives you a time to establish yourself as a subject matter expert. My first year on LinkedIn, I didn't post anything but memes. I just posted memes galore, because that's what I knew and that's what I was comfortable with. As I grew into an HR professional, I started to kind of tailor my content. I still post the memes, but now it's a lot more long and short form articles. I've done a lot of research. I've attended digital media classes to learn how to create content that's engaging and attracts followers. Now, as a recruiter, it's extremely beneficial, because I have a constant flow of passive candidates reaching out saying, hey, I don't like my job right now. I saw you post on LinkedIn. You're always on there. You're always on my feed. I want to talk with you. And that's actually helped me place about a dozen people No, I'd say actually 24 people in this company that I've never reached out to. They just came to me. They end up being qualified for one of our jobs. I referred them to the job, and they got a placement.
That's a win.
Yeah.
That's always a win. So, I mean, you mentioned the mentorship stuff. Obviously, you do a metric ton of it. So, on the resume side, what are some of the mistakes that you see us making all the time outside of like the acronyms or not transferring like, yeah, security forces to law enforcement, the big ticket items.
Yeah, I would say don't get hung up on your title with your ranks and stuff because a lot of civilians don't know it. Demilitarizing so big. Whenever possible, like use AI, find a mentor in the industry that you're interested in, especially if they're another veteran that has a similar background, and they can help you translate on your resume. Um, because not only do you, whatever you say on your resume, you're going to have to articulate in the interview. So you need to understand that you can't just use AI to rewrite everything because if AI has a different tone and voice than what you're saying, it's going to be very clear that you didn't actually write the resume. Um, Big thing I would tell any military service member: do not use a resume writer. Don't pay for it. I had a buddy drop $1,200 on a resume writer, and at the end of the day, I still had to rewrite his resume, and it was because of me that he got submitted, and he's now making like 165K a year. But it wasn't because of a lot of resume writers just sell you a pretty template. But you can use all these different softwares now that are available that will write your resume and tailor it exactly to the job posting. um, be intentional with your resume. You can have a general resume, and then what I would do is have a tailored resume to each job post, and you take it very slowly. The goal is not to apply to a million jobs for that one job. Yeah, yeah, there is some of a number game in it, but it's being more intentional. Like when you go apply, I would first look at the job posting, see the key details that they're looking for. What are the skills that they're highlighting? What are the like absolute qualified? And then what are the preferred skills? And then from there, if you can, try to hit each one of those in your resume when you're doing your experience bullets, right? I want to see cause and effect. I want to see your star. I want to see numbers. Quantifying numbers is the easiest way for me as a recruiter to understand both the scope of your responsibility and your overall impact in that position. If you just tell me, hey, I managed HR operations for the military, that doesn't tell me anything. If you tell me, hey, I was responsible for uh, 20 direct reports that oversaw the processing of 20,000 promotions, awards, transfers, and so forth, that gives me a much better idea of like, hey, what that scope actually is, and what your impact is. If you give me a percentage, I want to know a number. So if you tell me like, hey, I improved efficiency by 20%, 20% of what? Did you start at 80% and go to 100? That's a lot easier than saying you started at 50%. What do you call it?
Baseline.
Yeah, 50% base limit, and you rose it to 20% because you're having to work a lot harder to get that number up there. So having numbers is massive. Learning to speak the language. Go on Facebook groups. I love Facebook groups. As a recruiter, it's one of my best niches. Is I join Facebook groups for the industry. And Michael, I see your hand up. I definitely will answer the question, but I go on Facebook groups, and that's how I learned how to talk like a recruiter. I joined every recruiter group I could find, and I just sat there. I was a silent observer. I watched the things they griped about. I watched the lingo they used. If I didn't understand a word, I Googled it. And that way, when I got to my interviews, I was able to talk like an experienced recruiter. I was able to know what an ATS is, what a Boolean search string is. I knew how to craft them, which gave me that preparation. So I wasn't just coming out of the service bare bones with no knowledge. I came out of the service ready to take on the world because I had taken 3 months to study the entire industry before I started my recruitment SkillBridge. I took time to build that network. Facebook groups are phenomenal for that. Um, And then on your resume, keep it relevant, right? I don't want to know every JCO, every NKO you've ever done in the service. I really don't. I hate when people do that. I want to know what's relevant. So if you're a recruiter, I want to know about the sales meetings that you've gone to or trainings that you've done. I want to know about the certifications in outreach, in email outreach, digital outreach, so forth. Like I want to know about that. I want to know about education, certifications, and licenses, but keep them relevant. As a healthcare recruiter, I absolutely put my LVN on there. But if I was going for like an ops manager in a factory, I wouldn't put my LVN on there because one, it takes up space, and two, it's not relevant.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Michael, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so just a question with like when we are being like super intentional when it comes to building out our LinkedIn, making sure like say like um whether it's a for a specific job or a specific industry, and like say like I am being very intentional about every single word that's on my LinkedIn. Is there a if I'm being that specific, is there a problem with me, or is it how does it look from your perspective for me to generate the resume from LinkedIn that lays everything out from my profile if I'm being that specific with my profile?
I mean, so here's the thing, right? Unless you're tailoring your LinkedIn profile to that exact job posting, then you're doing yourself a disservice by just copying from LinkedIn into a resume format. I know LinkedIn allows you to do it, and you can absolutely use that to create a foundational resume, and then from there tailor it to the individual job posting.
Okay, and so my follow-up with that is um, for my LinkedIn, why not have my LinkedIn, depending on how I include things, having that as like here you want to know who Michael Kelly is, you go to my LinkedIn, you're going to know everything about me, about professionally, from my volunteer service to the different companies to the time and service to all these. And now and I'm asking this as more of a help for all of us. Now my quote unquote LinkedIn resume is now my master resume that I can now use that to take offline to, Word to actually use that to tailor towards jobs because that's got everything in there. So now instead of and I'm a big AI proponent, but if I have that master resume that has all the things that I've done, all the certs that I've done, all, has all the things. Now, instead of, just simply asking, ChatGPT to rewrite this for this job, which I've done, right? But now I just, what does this job require compared to what all of what I've done? Now I just make a duplicate of this and just remove the things that don't apply to this job. And it's in essence, I've got from what I've come up with all of my experience. Now I've got a tailored resume to that job, to that company.
Yeah, I would say one, most LinkedIn resumes are going to be pretty extensive. I know my LinkedIn, if I were to do the resume feature, I think it's like 9 pages. Typically, for most industries, we recommend 2 pages. That's different for healthcare professionals like nurse practitioners, PAs, RNs. You'll in academics, like in higher education, you're going to look at a CV, and that's typically anywhere from 3 to 5 pages. The reason why I say you can absolutely have a foundational resume and then tweak it, because I can guarantee you that my resume, if I was submitting a resume for an operations manager position, is going to be a lot different than my resume for a recruiter position. So just understand that like you can have the foundational resume, but you're absolutely gonna need to tweak it. If you're really interested in the job, you need to put time into it. As you're going through your job search, like I would edit the resume, then I would go ahead and apply to the position. Then what I would do with every single application I put in there, go back to LinkedIn, find someone in that company, find a touch point in that company, send out connection requests. You get about 75 to 100 of them a week as a premium, as a regular account on LinkedIn. Send personalized notes with each one of those connection requests. Build your network within that company, and you will build your own cheerleaders. You will build your own advocates that are like, hey, I really like Michael. I like what he brings to the team. I think we should hire him. When you send a message to a recruiter on LinkedIn, it helps when you have a rec number. If you're like, hey, Nate, I'm very interested in doing the cybersecurity role. Here's the rec number. This is why I believe I'd be the best candidate for the role, and then make your elevator pitch right there. That's going to go a long way to streamlining it instead of I personally, and I don't know how every other recruiter feels, but I hate when people send me a resume and they're like, here's my resume, go find me a job. That's not my job, right? Like I'm a recruiter, but I'm there to target specific jobs. Um, so when people send me profiles or resumes for like construction jobs, that's not my industry. My industry, Leidos QTC services, were one of four, as someone said in the chat, of the VA compensation and pension exams. We also do the RHRP program, which is the Reserve Health Readiness Program. That means we do all the PHAs, PDHAs, and PDHRAs for the reserves. And then our third line of business is OC Health for federal clients. We do all of the pre-employment annual physicals and return duty physicals, as well as disability physicals for the FBI, Secret Service, Border Patrol, CIA, pretty much anything with a 3-letter acronym. So if you don't fall in that category, you're kind of wasting both of our time just sending me a resume and saying, find me a job. Instead, what you should do is connect with me, engage with my content. And then if I transition into a new industry and that industry aligns with what you have, now you have the rapport and the foundation built up relationship wise to come to me and say, hey, Nate, I've been following you for a couple years now. And, I didn't see any jobs at your last company, but I see them now. A great example, the PA that did my exit physical out of the military, I was starting my SkillBridge, so I had my little business cards, and I was like, "Here, take my business card. I'm a recruiter right now for family med and pediatrics." And she was like, "Well, that's not a field I want to go in." And I was like, "Right, but listen, I don't know if I'm going to be in this field forever. So take my connections, and if I change specialties down the road, hit me up." Well, I transitioned into this role, which is more about OC Health, which is an area that she really wanted to be in. So she approached me. We were able to get her contracted as a contractor. And not only that, we ended up hiring her wife as the new clinical ops director for the whole company, all because she had that connection, and it was a 2-year relationship where every now and again she would send me a message, say, hey, you're doing great outside, I'm getting ready to transition out. So having that established relationship, it was a lot easier for me to say, hey, I want to help this person. I want to take time out of my busy day, even though I'm not the contract recruiter, and go make an introduction for her and then go advocate for her. And then when her wife was transitioning out of service, she was like, hey, can you talk with my wife? I ended up talking with her, and based on the skill set and the resume that I saw that she sent me to help her edit it, I was like, you know what, you'd be a great candidate for this job that I'm about to open up for a clinical ops director. And she ended up beating out 7 or 8 different VPs from different companies that had a plethora of civilian experience, but what they didn't have was a relationship with a recruiter that I can go to bat, because recruiters, we have our favorites. Sometimes, do they always get picked? No. There's times where my hiring team doesn't hire them, and I'm like, well, that was a mistake. And then 6 months down the road, if they fire the person, I'm like, here's that person again, you should pick first. But it definitely helps to have that advocate and that cheerleader on the inside.
Yeah, that's one. Go ahead,
That's a lot of good stuff.
Michael. Yeah, that's one thing that people tend to overlook, is that we're recruiters. We're kind of the cheerleaders on the inside, and I had a great talk with this person. Seemed like the really kind of culture. They're not in their exact best behavior with us once they realize it's a pre-screen. We're just getting them prepped. Has that been your experience too?
Yeah, that is true. I always tell all my hiring team that every hire is a gamble, because the face that you see during the hiring process is someone's best face. You usually see the mask slip off, and HR data confirms this, right? Like you usually see the mask slip off around the 6-month mark, and that's typically when people are going to say, "Hey, I want to stay here," or "No, I don't." Um, and I can say like 1,000%, like if I like someone, I'm going to go to bat so much harder than someone else, especially for tech positions, because the market's so saturated. that a lot of it is about connections. Like, hey, I feel like I get along very well with this person. I can see myself working with this person. I want them to come work here. And so I'm going to advocate a lot harder for that person than say someone who has similar qualifications, but ask me to get them a cup of coffee.
Yeah, and on the flip side too is you can tell when somebody's just kissing butt to to get ahead. It's kind of obvious. I'd say 9 out of
Yeah.
10 times. But go ahead.
Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, just with because I'm interested in the health service, but more on the technology side and the risk compliance, HIPAA management. But the for when you work with a client and that client gets hired, what kind of follow-up do you have with that client?
So for me, I try my best to stay engaged with people that I've made connections. Some of my hires, it's just it's like Tinder. It's like wham bam, thank you, ma'am, like bye, never gonna reach out to them again. Like the MAs, for example, there's like a dime a dozen that I hire. So it's hard to keep track. But the more professional level individuals like the VPs, the CPOs, the directors, those types of individuals, or if I have good rapport with them, then I always try to follow up with them. I always tell every one of my hires, my title is senior HR recruiter. So if you have HR related problems, come to me. I would rather you have a good experience and stay retained than to have to replace you in 6 months, because that just means more work for me. And I always tell my hiring teams, like, I'm not here to take your order. I'm not just the recruiter that you're like, hey, let me go place an order for this type of candidate. I'm your talent advisor. I'm here to help you grow and very instrumental in the workforce planning of the organization. So to do that, part of it is the employee experience, and the employee experience starts before you ever hire the employee. It starts with your job posting, and then the messages and the outreach, and then from there throughout the entire recruitment process, and then following up with that candidate, even if it's 6 months down the line. It's a touch point that people tend to appreciate, because a lot of companies, once the recruiter is done with you, it's like, see ya.
So cover letters, talk to me about them. Good, bad, useless, helpful. Anybody read them?
uh okay, so with AI, they've kind of become redundant because it's very obvious to tell what, when it's AI driven. But I will say, like, a cover letter is really great for explaining gaps in employment, short tenures, um, expressing your enthusiasm for the role. That's where a cover letter comes in. Like, I had military spouses that had a 5-year gap. And normally, if I see a large gap and I have a ton of qualified candidates, that candidate's going to go to the bottom priority, because I'm looking to fill as efficiently as possible. And I know that the gap's going to be a lot harder to sell to the hiring team than somebody who's already qualified, been in the industry for 5+ years. That's like current. And so, but I have had military spouses that have turned in cover letters that explain, like, hey, the reason I have all these short tenures is my spouse is military, and it wasn't my intention to leave these employments. I left them all on good terms. If you call them, they'll give me a great reference, but that's why I had short tenure. And it was a lot easier to go to that hiring team and say, hey, this is the reason why. Because at the end of the day, a resume is just a piece of paper that tells me your professional journey, but I have to do a lot of the connecting of the dots. So if I have to look at it and I see a lot of short tenures, a lot of gaps, I'm going to say you lack commitment, you are a job hopper. There's a lot that I don't know. But I've had candidates that I've reached out to because it was slow and they had a terrible resume, but I was like, you know what? They still meet the experience section. So I'm going to go ahead and talk with them. And it turns out, like, hey, her first job, her spouse moved 6 months after she started. She had like 6 jobs in 5 years. The first job was because her spouse moved. The second job, her spouse was, or not spouse, her boss was sexually harassing her. So she left after 3 months. Her third job, again, another, transition out of the PCS. And then the fourth job, they laid her off. And the fifth job, they laid her off. So, that's the reality of the job market, and taking the time to talk with her. Did she get the job? No. Unfortunately, there was someone more qualified, but it did teach me a very strong lesson about talking to people whenever I have the opportunity, because every single resume I treat as a person. Every single one of them has a backstory. Does that mean every single time I talk to someone they're going to get a job? No. Sometimes it's just not culture fit. Sometimes you have to understand, like, the market right now is extremely competitive. So coming in and giving a mediocre or a basic resume is no longer going to be the solution to get you a job. And that's why you see people, oh, I applied to 1,000 places. The especially like cybersecurity, tech, HR, a lot of the big fields, especially if you're looking for remote, it's extremely competitive. And so you want to put everything you can to tip the scales into your favor.
Yeah. So like, talk to me about the resume side with this. What is it you see in the first 10 seconds on a resume? What is it you're looking for? What catches your eye?
I'll be honest, I love a good professional summary. I love a good professional summary that's like I think of it as like an elevator pitch, because that tells me if I want to keep reading. That's the attention grabber. And I look for keywords. Like, as a recruiter, do I know everything about tech? No, but I do have a hit list of keywords that the management team would like me to find, whether that's systems, key skills, whatever. So I go through that and I look for those keywords. But when I look at a professional summary that says, "Hey, I'm an experienced blank with X number of years, and these are some of my key metrics," like my professional summary for the job that I got here. I made sure to highlight that I understood that I had 17 months of experience, but this is what I did in those 17 months. So I said, I'm an experienced Navy veteran and talent acquisition specialist that specializes in clinician recruitment. My key skills are, and I took this from the job posting. I was like, collaboration, communicating with key stakeholders, and innovative sourcing strategies. So I already hit the three things that they're talking about in the job posting right there. And then the next line, I said, over the course of my 17 months as a physician recruiter, I recruited 117 physicians, nurse practitioners, and PAs, leading to increase in organizational revenue generation by $15 million. And my hiring team later told me that that was the line that caught their attention, because they were like, he did this in 17 months. Imagine what he's going to do when he has 5 years of experience. And for those that don't know, like 117 hires in clinician recruitment, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's doctors, nurses, like those licenses are credentialed. They're so, because I had to recruit them on the mill side, and it's even harder there. And getting a chunk of them was like they throw you a parade. Dude, what you did there is like, you got your own fair going on. So we've put in our application. How should we follow up? I mean, once we put it in, what's the best follow-ups that you've seen that are the most effective?
Yeah, I would say reaching out to the recruiter, like connecting with us. I understand that a lot of jobs get like hundreds, if not thousands, of applicants. And so being able to put a face to that resume, a face to that name on the resume is a big factor for that. Understand that, sometimes you're just not qualified. And some recruiters think that it's more of a mercy to ghost you than to reject you. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I have seen in the past. With follow up, persistence is key, but don't be like a stalker. Like, I had a candidate just over the last month. She's a customer service representative. We made her an offer at a job hiring fair, like on the spot, but due to like financial constraints with the economy and like adjustments to training schedules, we were like, okay, we can't start her yet. So we ended up keep pushing back her start date. Well, she was texting, calling, emailing me every single day. And I would send my boss, I was like, dude, please get her a start date. But it got to the point where I was just avoiding her calls and emails because I didn't have anything to tell her. And then
Yeah.
yesterday, actually, I was able to get her a start date, and now she's going to start. But like, there comes a time where you just have to cut and run. Like, I would give it, like, I would try touch base probably at least once a week. I think that's a fair touch point. But I wouldn't make it like a daily thing.
Ooh. No, that's
Yeah.
sometimes you can talk your way out of a job. Like This is the person you want customer service because she's incredibly annoying. As they say, once you've made the sale, stop selling. A lot of jobs aren't posted. So how do you find a good way to break into that hidden job market? Is it just more than networking?
It's networking. It's absolute networking. I get approached probably every 4 to 6 weeks on LinkedIn with jobs. Back in April, I had 2 friends that I'd worked with at my previous company that were like, "Hey," they both went to separate companies, and they both offered me TA director positions. They were like, "Hey, I can't think of anybody better. I want you to come and be our TA director for a startup." And I was like, "How long has it been open? 6 months? Not long enough." And then the other one was at the ATI physical therapy, the director level. And I was like, I'm not going to do it. My current company treats me too well. But that's how I was able to tap those positions that weren't even posted yet because
ATI is
I can,
big too.
yeah. And I can tell you, like, as a recruiter, I know what's coming down the pipeline well before it's ever posted. And so I'll go look. The first place I go look is my LinkedIn profile. And I go look through my network and I say, hey, who's qualified? Um, and then
Crap.
there I'll approach them and say, hey, this job's about to my pockets so that when the job does hit, I can refer you right to the recruiter. And that's kind of what's happening right now is I had a recruiter from the VA.
Dang.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Sorry.
gotcha now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a recruiter from the VA that reached out. We stayed in contact for the last 2 years. He has been on LinkedIn talking about how his contract's coming to an end and he's looking for a job. And when I saw that we had a physician recruiter position available, I reached out and said, hey, I think you should apply for this job. I also am friends with the hiring manager. Like, we're actually good buddies. And so I reached out to the hiring manager. I was like, you need to hire this guy. Like, I've been talking with him for 2 years. I know he knows his stuff. I know he can come in and be a rock star. And now he has a job interview this week for the position. So that's a way, and that's why I'm always saying build rapport. Because again, you'll never know which side of the hiring table you're going to end up on. Sometimes you're the interviewer, and sometimes you're the interviewee. So take that time, build relationships, build rapport. Just because someone's a tech today doesn't mean they won't be a hiring manager tomorrow.
Yep.
You take balance with LinkedIn. It's, some of it's people and some of the people you don't know. You don't want to just spam random accounts. But what I do is when I was getting out, I targeted TA because I knew those were the gatekeepers and I knew those were the people that had the jobs. So I was like, okay, so I'm going to connect with all my friends, family, coworkers, classmates. Okay, I did that. Now I'm going to go hit up every HR and TA person I can find in the jobs, in the industries and the companies that interest me. So that allowed me to build a large network. And then over time, more people are approaching me than I'm sending out now. And they're for random places like, production manager, cybersecurity. But it's nice to have that if I ever need it. I now have that established network of candidates, but also opportunities.
So this is my last one before I let you go, unless anybody else has questions, and fire the hands up. If you give every transitioning veteran one piece of advice before they hit the apply button, what would it be?
LinkedIn. I'm the biggest LinkedIn advocate. I'm actually writing a book on it, but like I can't stress enough LinkedIn. LinkedIn will be your key to bypassing the entire hiring process where you don't have to worry. Like, and I want you guys to understand too, you'll hear a lot of people talk about ATS compliant resumes, how to beat the ATS. And just understand that's mostly BS. The At the end of the day, it's a recruiter making the decision on whether to forward your resume to that hiring team or not. And so building that human connection, having that rapport established, that relationship to lean on, that's going to go the longest way. Because I always tell people when I do my interview or my LinkedIn courses I've taught at Purdue Global University and WGU now. And I tell people all the time, like, I'd rather have a great network and an okay resume than a great resume and an okay network, because I know the network is the one that not only will get me open the door to the opportunity, but help me like land the opportunity in the long run, than a resume that's just a piece of paper that summarizes my qualifications. It doesn't mean it's not important. It just means that if you put more focus, instead of applying to 1,000 jobs, do this. Go talk to people on LinkedIn. Take the time that you would have done to apply to those jobs and apply and talk to people on LinkedIn. Build the network, build rapport up. I guarantee you're going to see a lot greater results that way than sending off a bajillion applications with random resumes that aren't tailored to it. Avoid software like Jobcase, which anytime I see a Jobcase resume, instant in the trash, because it's like 99% of the time it's a waste of my time. It's truck drivers, it's gardeners, it's waitresses, it's people that don't meet the qualifications for an audiologist job. And so I know pretty much every recruiter in my company is the same way. If we see Jobcase, and basically Jobcase is AI, you can either create a foundational resume or you submit a resume, and then it sends it and applies to like every job possible. And it's in the theory of the law of numbers, like the greater amount of numbers, the greater amount of success you have. I don't like that approach. I think it's very ingenuine. And, at the end of the day, you're going to go to interviews, and I can't stand when candidates come to interviews and say, what's this job again? What company is this? Like, it's so frustrating because it doesn't show that you're genuinely wanting to be here. When I came to my interview for this company, even though I had someone on the inside, I did hours of research. I knew what the size of their contracts were. I knew who their clients were. I had written down the values and the motto of the company. And then I had research notes on both of my interviewers. So I knew they were both prior Army. I knew they'd both been with the company for like 10 plus years. Like, I had a whole dossier on each one of them. And so when I got there, I had a game plan in mind. And I also did a quick summary of the job description and came up with my own independent ideas of, one, how would I make it better? Two, what do I bring to the table that the other candidates don't have? And I had that listed out, and I listed out my interview questions. So when I came very prepared and deliberate, and it definitely made me stand out, because a referral can get you the interview, but at the end of the day, you have to get yourself the job.
Yeah, they can get you into the box, but they can't open the door. That's
Yeah.
the big step. So, Nathaniel, awesome. Thank you for coming out today. You have any closing thoughts you'd like to share before I let you go?
No, I will say, obviously, connect with me on LinkedIn. I see my LinkedIn count up to like 40 now. Connect with me. I'm always happy to be a resource for you. If you ever have questions, come ask me. Seven Eagle is a phenomenal group. I'm a huge fan of them. Um, if you're looking for a job, I always recommend the staffing agencies. If you can find staffing agencies that particularly target veterans and military, there's nowhere out there that says that you only have to work with one staffing agency. Unfortunately, as a recruiter, no staffing agency looks for recruiter jobs because they're mostly trying to outsource those. But if you have like cybersecurity, tech, HR, go to those staffing firms and send them your resume and go get a dozen people, because that's your force multiplier for your job search. Because those staffing agencies are incentivized to help you find a job, because they get commission based on placing you, and it should be no cost out of your pocket. Then get on LinkedIn, start networking, and don't just network with people getting out, network with people currently in. Because again, if you're a recruiter, it's all about your relationships. I can't tell you how many jobs I've gotten approached me that said, "Hey, we love your LinkedIn presence. We want you to come be our LinkedIn manager. We want you to come be our social media manager, our recruiter," and so forth. And I'm available any time of the day. You can send me a message. I do free resume reviews. I do free LinkedIn reviews. Don't be mad, because I will redline out of it, and I'm very straightforward with everyone. But I will help you get a
Good.
job. And if I don't have a job for you, I'll get you in touch with one of my connections that might.
My man, Nathaniel Young, thank you very much for coming out. Nathaniel of Leidos QTC Health Services, thanks for spending an hour with us, dropping some wisdom, and then even more for what you do for these folks. It is truly appreciated, and I